Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cartoon Season. I am Tyler, and I'm talking more about cartoons as I do. Today, we're going to talk about some Ice Age 2, The Meltdown. Man, just one of those movies. Old movie, of course, but one of those that's like, it makes sense. Makes sense we got Ice Age 2. I remember watching it the first time. It was great. It was awesome. Ice Age deserves to come back in all its glory. But yeah, just a couple things I want to touch on with this film. I do want to talk about some of the new characters, which is Ellie, Crash, and Eddie, and kind of what they add to the film. And then I want to talk about the Meltdown in general and kind of the premise and what I like about it, basically. So yeah, that's what I'm going to talk about. So let me start talking about it. Like I said, we're going to talk about some Ellie, Crash, Eddie. First off, they are all possums. Now, the word all has an asterisk. Because they're not all possums, right? Like Crash and Eddie, possums, right? Easy to tell, Ellie thinks she's a possum. Kind of ridiculous, I mean, a little bit out there, a little bit, space case a little bit. Because it's like, you're like really big. Like ridiculously bigger than Crash and Eddie. Like it's laughable. Like it's one thing where you have like a litter of puppies, right? And like usually there's always one that's the runt of the litter, visibly smaller than all the rest. But not a lot smaller. Not a lot where it's like, oh, that's a different creature entirely. No. It would be like if one of them was like the size it's like if one of them was the size of an elephant and you're like, that's strange. That's a little bigger than the rest of the litter, huh? It's like, no, that is a demon in disguise. We need to put it down. That is not a dog. So that's kind of a fun premise, right? Where it's like, he thinks he's a possum, and so you can't really, what's his name? Manny's trying to bond, but he can't really bond because doesn't think she's a mammoth. It's almost like gaslighting, where it's like, is she a possum? Is like maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm the idiot, and she actually is a possum. Also, they're all family. They all really care about each other, which is nice. There's no like resentment. There's no, like they immediately build up that no, they are all siblings. They all love each other to death, and they will do anything for each other. I love that. There's a nice backstory where Crash and Eddie find Ellie abandoned, so that kind of explains it. Where it's like, I think Ellie or whatever kind of explains it with a throwaway comment. It's like, oh no, we're all family, blah blah blah. But then we get the flashback where it's like, oh, that's why. Like that's kind of what we assumed. Where it's like, okay, clearly Ellie's not a possum, so clearly they found her or something, right? But then we actually see the backstory, and it's nice. It's very sweet. It explains everything very clearly in black and white, and it makes everything make sense. Where it's like, okay, it makes sense why they all love each other so much, why they're so close, why they take care of each other, and it is funny though because they do kind of throw shots at mammoths a few times. Yeah, it's like, but your sister's a mammoth, and then Ellie herself. You're a mammoth yourself. Like, you're this. It's so weird. It's one thing to be self-deprecating, but like, she's not self-deprecating. She really thinks she isn't a mammoth and she's throwing shots at a mammoth. It's like, this is you. You are this, I am you, and he is I. Once she finally does come around, and once it is clear, that Ellie is a mammoth, and she realizes it for herself. I mean, because that's the thing where it's like, Crash and Eddie know she's a mammoth. Like, they know, but they kind of just play along because it's what they've known for so long, and it's what Ellie believes. So it's like, let's just have her keep believing it. She's happy, But it is a huge turning point for everyone. It's kind of a huge sigh of relief. It's like, okay, now we don't have to tiptoe around this. Now we can speak freely and we can move on with our lives. We're not being gaslit anymore. And it's nice because she finally realizes what she is, and now she can start moving along with her life that way. And it just makes the world make sense again. We're not crazy people anymore. But kind of moving on to more of who they are. We kind of see a little bit of Ellie, but with Crash and Eddie, they're daredevils, which is a very nice spin to put on their characters, not just the loving brother possums. They're like daredevil creatures. So it's like, they're going around everywhere, they're hanging from stuff, they're flying through the air, they're messing with other animals, messing with Diego and Sid especially, which is very funny. Especially when they first meet and they don't really know each other. We're not a group yet, and they're doing the whole like whack-a-mole thing, and they're just making them look silly, making them look like fools. And like Diego has this fun line where he says something like, if anyone asks, they were what does he say? They were Wolverines or something. they were Wolverines, and there was 50 of them. It's like we do not tell the truth. If people have questions, we do not tell them what happened because we are fools. We're gonna make us sound manly. And then, but at the very end, with all the little riffs, with all the little, the mammoth thing, the possum thing, the tension, the especially towards the end where, Manny starts to develop feelings for Ellie, and that whole weirdness through everything, they all do come around at the end, and they extend the family both ways. Our main group accepts this new group as family, and vice versa. So it's nice. We're getting a crew, we're getting more people. The whole adding characters through a love interest thing is a little cliche, but I think it works for this film, and I think this is a very solid entry to the group. It's nice. It doesn't feel like characters are just erroneously being added to our fun-loving trio. Like, no, like it's more organic than other films make it seem with their character groups. But along with that, I do want to talk about the Meltdown itself. So the first movie was too cold. This movie's too hot, right? They're like, the writers were like, what do we do? What was the first movie about? It was about cold. It was about cold. Everyone agree with that? This movie it's gonna be about hot. It's too hot. Ice Age is the Meltdown, right? It's the opposite. So a lot of thought went into that. Nature is such a good villain. I think that's so good because, like, I mean, with the first film, you could argue that we had, the other saber-toothed tigers as villains, right? You could argue that the humans somewhat villains, right? I wouldn't say that. I'm not biased or anything, but like humans are great. But even in the first one, it was cold. And it was a lot of internal conflict as well that was happening there. With the second film, you could argue that the vultures are villains. You could argue that like the water alligator demons were villains, but for the most part, it's just Mother Nature. It's just the earth. It's just the atmosphere. It's just getting too hot. We're gonna get some water. Water's good. Make sure to drink your water. You never drink enough water. But there is a such thing as too much water. This film proves too much water can be deadly, especially when it is an ocean of water that is literally going to drown you. So there's that. And so, speaking of those alligator demons, we do have those two like alligator things that were actually kind of scary. Like, I remember first watching this movie when I was younger and being like, ooh, I don't like that. Like when there's that really chilling scene, especially like the like score in that moment was like really, really haunting. Like, it was almost like a horror scene with like the like block of ice spinning very slowly, and Manny staring at it. And then, he gets called back before we can actually get the reveal. But then we get the reveal of those two alligator things, and it like zooms in on them, on like their eyes, and their eyes move, and I'm like, ooh, I don't like that. What's that foreshadowing? Not a fan of that. Please, no scary stuff in my Ice Age film. And then also the vultures. You know, like I said, the vultures are kind of scary too. They're more creepy than anything. You know, they're gonna like eat everybody. Didn't like that. You know, and even like their song, it's like they're singing about eating us. You know, not a fan of this. Can we change the station a little bit? You know, can someone hand me the aux? And then another fun thing about the Meltdown is Diego learning to swim. That was cool because that never really came up in the first film because there was no water anywhere, I don't believe. But it's funny that, you know, Diego was kind of seen as this more, you know, warrior type character, and he can't swim, you know? So that's a fun thing. It's also a fun thing with him kind of, you know, bonding with Sid even more. Where it's like Sid wants to help. You know, Sid, of course, throwing his jabs here and there where he can because, you know, Diego's given him enough jabs throughout the entirety of their relationship. But also, like, legitimately, he wants to help. And he's like, no, like, I can show you how to swim. Like, we can do this. You know, we can, you know, if our life is a skill tree, I can give you some skill points to upgrade that skill tree, you know? You know, and also his like, very, like, somewhat reverse psychology where he's like, oh, no, even pups can, you know, even, like, baby tigers learn how to swim, you know? And then later on, he's like, oh, no, I made that up. You know, because even with that, he was trying to motivate Diego to be like, hey, you can do this. Like, you're like the coolest guy I know. Like, you can learn how to swim. And then we also have a moment where Manny is putting his own life on the line to save Ellie, again with the whole flood and the water rising and Ellie being trapped. It's another moment that would have never happened if the meltdown wasn't happening. You know, but it is a nice moment showing, you know, how much he does love her, and then the reciprocation of those feelings is always nice. And it is also a nice extension off the first film as well, because again, the first film, Manny was a loner. Manny did not care about anyone or anything. You know, he didn't want a part of anything or anyone. And so for him to grow so much throughout just the first film, and with the second film where he's growing even further to even loving another person, because again, so much, the whole thing of Manny's tragic backstory is that his wife and child were killed, were murdered, you know? So it's like, we could never think of a future, I mean, especially since we didn't know mammoths were still a thing. Like, Manny, for all intents and purposes, was the final mammoth on Earth. So the fact that this movie can go to a place where it's like, it's not just cool because it's like, oh, more mammoths. It's cool because it's like, it started off with that discovery of, oh, Manny's like this because his family was killed. And now we get to a second film where he can make a new family. Like, it's so awesome, you know? Then we have the boat being very convenient. Like, that's always something that I look at and I'm like, why was there a boat there? Like, I mean, you imagine it was maybe like the bark of like a huge tree or something, but it's like very convenient. That's probably the biggest example of like, all right, okay, or just the writers didn't know what to do, you know, or maybe who cares, you know, it's a cartoon, who cares, right? They're just suspend our disbelief. There's a boat there, who cares? And at the very end, we see just like a wild amount of mammoths, and it's like, oh, mammoths are still very much a thing. It's not just like here and there, picky choosy. There's a lot of mammoths still on Earth, you know, and it's crazy because they choose not to go with them, you know. It's like, oh no, you should be with your own kind. And it's like, oh no, we're family, we should stick together, you know. Which is nice. You know, I don't really remember the other movies very well. You know, I'm obviously gonna watch them, and I think there's one or two of at the very end that I've never seen, so that's fun. I don't think they ever just with the trying to dust away the cobwebs of my brain. I don't think they ever see more mammoths in the future. I don't think we ever like rebound on that. Maybe we do. Again, my memory isn't the greatest, but it's a very interesting decision to be like, oh, there's more mammoths in the world. Oh, we're not going to talk about them though. So, but you know, it works. But yeah, that is Ice Age 2: The Meltdown. Again, I really like the addition of some of the new main characters, and the premise of it being, last movie was too cold, this movie's too hot, is nice. Yeah, that is it. Let me know what you think of Ice Age 2: The Meltdown. Let me know if this is your first time watching it, or if it's not. Is it better than you remember the first time you saw it? For me, not really. It's about the same, but it's Ice Age, so it's always been a good time, And yeah, make sure to go check out other cartoon season episodes on the Tiger T YouTube channel or on your favorite podcast platform of choice. Links to everywhere you can find this podcast are going to be in the description as always. Make sure to check out other stuff I do on the channel, as well as reactions to different animated stuff and gameplays. Video games are fun, and so let's play them. And aside from that, until next time, let me know what other things you want to see me cover, different movies, cartoons, anime. Make sure to watch Ice Age 3, because we'll be covering that soon enough. And just in general, watch more cartoons.